Hey, we're doing something. We're here in studio because we've got a friend coming. We've got somebody hanging out with us today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hang out with with this guy's. I've known him for a while now, and he's always a big part of our local community. So today we've got Ben Ashwood with us.
Hey, how'd you get in?
Through the door.
Yeah, good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Our security policy might need to be increased a little. Maybe we need like one of those little dingers or something.
It's a little lax.
It is. You know? But man, Ben, thank you so much for being with us. Being with us here today, man. We love bringing people in and just chatting with them and kind of hearing their stories. And you've been involved in this kind of non-religious-y secular space for a little while. Give us a little bit of background. Like, how did you kind of get into that? Were you raised super religious? Have you had spiritual experiences? I mean, all of that good stuff.
Oh man, yeah. So I was raised super religious.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my granddad was a preacher.
Oh,
I think a Nazarene preacher.
Yeah.
In Kentucky. And so my parents were very religious. Different churches growing up, and was, I think, in my teenage years in like a non-denominational church that was very kind of Holy Spirit, talk in tongues.
Oh yeah. I never got to do that. I never got to talk in tongues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I experienced that. I took it, very serious in my teenage years, and was like searching for the Lord and prayer, and it was a lot of focus was on like personal relationship with Jesus. And
Sure.
yeah, and then later in life, I think just slowly deconstructed, kind of layer by layer.
Right. Were you ever really focused on like the historicity aspect, or like the, hey, we found chariot wheels, they found the ark type of stuff? Was that ever something that really mattered, or was it more focused on like that relationship with Jesus?
It was definitely more focused on that relationship.
Really?
I mean, the Bible definitely mattered. Like I remember there was a period where I kind of carried it around school, and I was
yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
I was in that crowd.
Yeah. Lots of friends, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I started a Christian rock band.
Oh, no way.
In high school.
Oh man.
Yeah. Not great.
What do you play?
Bass guitar.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
All right.
I mean, I play other stuff around the house, piano and guitar, and but in bands normally I play bass.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. So, but the focus was really on like your inner life and prayer and that kind of thing. I don't think I really thought much of anything about the historicity aspect and those things until I
Right.
was deconstructing and like listening to debates and the
Yeah.
4 horsemen of the apocalypse and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
how long ago was that?
Maybe 13 or 14 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that. A little more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the vast majority of your life, you were very much in a belief system.
Yeah. Definitely in my youth, and I think more in college, I just it was the kind of typical thing of I was just going to church less. So I still believed and like would pray sometimes.
Yeah.
But I wasn't actively like involved in the way that I was in high school.
Right. But we often get accused, because all three of us have, religious backgrounds, right? And we all stepped out of it at different times, but we often get accused that we were never really in the faith. We didn't truly believe. And it sounds like what you're saying is, no, man, I legitimately was into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was into it. I was in the worship band. Like I was doing my best to be into it or something.
Yeah.
I think for I mean, a lot of people, maybe it's more like in the South or the Western US thing, but in this flavor of Christianity, I think it's the people that are trying to take it seriously that get to a point where they find out that they can't believe in the way that they had wanted to, because they were seeking to like get to the truth.
That's really interesting. That is a really interesting thought. Why do you think that is the case? Why do you think that happens?
I mean, I think it's just a case of sometimes the truth isn't what you wanted it to be. And like I was being told that the truth was like the Christian God is the real God, and seek him and you'll find him. And like I was taking it maybe more seriously than I should have.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think when people are thinking more critically about it and they're actually spending time contemplating these things, and I really want to know, it matters to me if it's true. You know, it's a lot easier to just kind of be a cultural Christian and just, okay, great. Yeah.
Go along to get along.
To get along. Don't think about it all that critically. Don't really dig in and seek truth. Don't really try to find out, why was this passage written? Who was it written to? What was the purpose? You know, that kind of thing. And then comparing that to the others, seeing if they match up. You know, it's when people begin thinking critically about these things. And Ben, I know him well enough to know he's a critical thinker. And he loves to dig in. And so I think when somebody's that way, that faith is something that is harder and harder to hang on to. I mean, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So what was some of those things? I mean, you mentioned, you know, the Four Horsemen. We all three of us definitely have watched, you know, everything from Hitchens and, you know, and the rest of them, right? We've got, you know, a couple of his books sitting around too. What was that kind of initial crack? You know, what was that peeking up under the curtain thing for you?
I always love this question because it's different from everybody.
Yeah, it is.
It's all, they're so individual, you know, but what was the thing for you, Ben?
I'm not real sure. I mean, I think it was a slow, gradual process. It was probably something along the lines of, after kind of being out of church life for a while and then having young kids, we a few times were looking at getting back into a church. And you know, connecting with the community, raising a family, that sort of thing. And so it was introspection about like, what kind of church, what do, you know, where am I at now? What do I believe? What fits best with? And that's probably the very beginning of it. And then part of that, like introspection, I think I believed in there were like various versions of a God that I felt I could believe in. And they got to a point where it was sort of like, I'm not sure if I need that. I'm not sure that God exists.
Yeah.
Well, and adding kids into the equation adds a certain weight to these questions, because you feel responsible for this little human and you want to train them in the right way. You want to give them good information. And so if I have a son, should I teach him that he should veil his wife? You know, should I teach them to handle poisonous snakes? You know, these, so when you find yourself saying, I'm not going to teach him that, even though there's some believers that do, and I'm not going to teach him that thing, even though there's some believers that do, you know. And so what do I say when my kid says, hey, Daddy, did somebody really walk on water? Do I say, am I going to tell my kid, yes, that actually happened? Or am I going to say, well, you know, it's a story, and, you know, it just adds a certain, another layer.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that's something that will resonate with a lot of people, I think, because, you know, funny enough, even just last night, we were out at a church hearing this awesome talk. And, you know, one of the ladies came up to us at the end, and we were just kind of chatting. And she said, you know, I go to this church, but honestly, I'm probably more aligned with you guys as atheists, you know? But she mentioned one of the reasons that she started going to the church was because she had children. She had young children. And there was this this aspect of I want to give them something that they can use to kind of navigate the world with, right? Religion seems to be, that thing for a lot of people. Maybe we should give them that. There was also that aspect of the community, just the fact of having that third place. That's something we've been talking about, more and more. You've got that work, that home, and then where else do you go, know? And it sounds like that was a massive part of it for you. It wasn't so much about the like, well, he really did split those loaves and fishes, It was a lot more about the how do I get my children connected with people and how do I give them something to kind of help them through life. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that's spot on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you were in that space and you were thinking about, what is it that I can give my children to kind of navigate forward? Was there a moment where you were like, hey, maybe we don't need religion at all for this?
I mean, eventually.
For sure.
Yeah, I think early on, I think a lot of the motive to do that, to connect with a church, was more cultural, like community driven. Like they should have peers or people that want them to, are invested in them becoming like a good person.
Right.
Want to see them succeed in their future and be the person they're supposed to be. And there's definitely like a morality aspect to that.
Yeah.
There's like a cultural tradition aspect of like being accepted in the broader culture.
And you're from this area. I mean, you've been here your whole life, right?
Yep.
Okay, so talk about that a little. We've got people still to this day, across this country that really do not understand what it is like to not be religious in the South. Did you notice that kind of shift in your life and the way people were treating you when you kind of stepped away? Or, hey man, honestly, it's been pretty chill, but of course everybody, tells me God bless you, all the time, right? Like,
honestly, it's for me, my experience has been more, it's been pretty chill.
That's good.
But people say God bless you. I think it's a big part of that is like I've always been near Nashville. It's still in the South, but it's a major city.
Yeah.
So there's a blend of like of the broader American culture, which is more just accepting of different religious beliefs.
Right.
And in the suburbs of that, it's a little bit of like you can feel that the suburbs are kind of mediating between the very liberal city and the very not progressive areas of Tennessee. But because of the immediate people around me were more like accepting of different types of beliefs.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like close knit week to week with my extended family, which were more conservative.
Right.
It wasn't really a tumultuous change.
That's good.
And also it probably helped that it happened over a long period of time. Like my genuine beliefs gradiated over probably a couple of years.
Sure.
And I think like broadly, there's this cliff where it's okay. There's like people are perfectly happy to accept that you believe some version of God.
Right.
As long as it's some version.
Yes. As long as you're still a believer.
Yeah. And I was on that for a long time of like, there's some version of
Right.
a watered down God that maybe isn't the God of the Bible, maybe isn't what other people
The
believe.
universe or energy,
Right.
love,
Yeah. So I think by the time I was like myself willing to be like, I don't really believe, I think other people around me were ahead of me
Yeah.
on that.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well,
So
that could be very helpful.
yeah, that's a huge thing. I mean, that's something that, definitely wasn't common 30, 40 years ago. Definitely wasn't common, I would say, even 15 years ago. And the fact that, we have more and more people that are able to kind of step out of, that religious space and not have to be traumatized through that whole process, especially by losing, close family and friends and all that. So have you come out, so to speak, to parents and everybody else in the extended family, and how have they taken that?
Pretty well. I mean, they don't love it.
Sure. They're not coming to the baby barbecues, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. They they pray for me.
Yeah.
It's basically the approach I get.
Yeah.
Like they're waiting for me to come around.
Sure.
Maybe as I get older,
Right.
and frail, I'll come back around. And I'm like,
right.
Good Godspeed.
Right.
Good luck to you.
I gotta say though, I understand why people will get frustrated by that. And there are sometimes I do too, right? Where somebody says, I'll pray for you, whatever. Those are kind of the Christians I like the best, so because it's like basically what they're telling me is, hey, I may disagree with you, but I'm not really going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
love that.
I mean, it's pretty much like, let's just set this aside.
Right.
We've got other stuff to do. I want to see the grandkids.
Right,
and,
right.
Like, yeah, cool.
See, and that again is something that I'm thrilled to see happening more and more. I'm thrilled to see more and more that people are finding themselves in this space of, look, hey, I really believe and it really matters to me, but you're my child and I just want the best for you. And, maybe I'll bring it up once or twice, or I'll slide you a book here or there. But overall, like, let's hang out. Let's have Thanksgiving dinner. Let's stay in each other's lives,
Yep.
That's really powerful. But it definitely isn't something that is across the board
Oh, no.
in the community, which is frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, it's common in the secular community to hear people's stories that aren't that, where they just got cut off from family.
Yeah.
Or, situations where there was like abuse or power struggling, or, like it's not the most common thing that it was
Right.
mostly easy.
Right. Now, did you have that angry atheist kind of phase? Were you pissed off at the Bible and religious people and all that stuff for a while? Or was it kind of, again, because of that kind of long extended deconstruction, did it just maybe soften those edges a little?
It probably softened it a little. I mean, I feel like everybody goes through a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I probably went through some of that. When I was like at the tail end and listening to debates and like the harm religion has done.
Yeah.
And, but I'm still not very like, I guess forward in my atheism or evangelical. Like I don't really want to convince anybody that's
Sure.
what they should think. So I wasn't ever like outward with it. I think it was just an inward sort of phase for a while where I was like, why am I angry about this?
Yeah.
But I'm also not in confrontation a lot with believers who are telling me like I'm going to hell. Like they definitely exist.
Sure.
And I just avoid them. Our part of it is I blend in. I wanted to say pass for a bit. But like somebody says under. Like have a blessed day or something at the drive-through, I'm like, thank you. Like, I don't,
Right.
or I'll,
Yeah, you
people
don't.
say prayer, I'll be like, amen.
Right.
Yeah, like I participate in the traditions. I don't like go to church and stuff,
Sure.
but I don't take it as an opportunity to be like, that doesn't really exist. You should think through that.
Yeah, you're not confrontational, and you don't seize on every opportunity to point out somebody's an area where you disagree.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's one of the things I've always liked about
Yeah.
Ben is that one, he's consistent. Whenever Ben shows up, he's always been, and he's very steady.
Yeah.
And you always know what you're getting. Whereas you and I are not necessarily like that.
We're a little all over the place sometimes. Yeah. I'll take that. That's a fair criticism.
Gary could show up hot and spicy, or he could show up, emotionally drained, or just about anything, on the spectrum. But Ben has always been, and he's steady, and I like that.
Both the pitch and volume of my voice changes in a 5-minute conversation about 300 times, whereas you are always just cool as a freaking cucumber, just so matter of fact, very, very, relaxed in how you approach this stuff. And I think what you just said is something really interesting too, especially for our non-religious community. There's a lot of people out there in the atheist, agnostic space, right? That they take the exact opposite approach from you. And they say, no, you know what, Ben, by doing that, you're perpetuating the system of harm and all this stuff. Maybe they're right. I don't know. But why do you think you take that approach? Why do you think you don't go out of your way all the time to say, hey, man, I'm not a believer, man. God isn't real type of stuff. Why do you kind of just, engage with it a little and just have that more relaxed demeanor?
I mean, I would like to say a big part of it is, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure that I think it's the harm that other people think it is. I'd like to say that. I think there's a big chunk of it that just boils down to personality differences.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think like some people aren't confrontational in that way.
Right.
And like it is, I think a big part of it is in my day-to-day life, it's protective. It's just more comfortable for me to not feel like I'm in conflict with people in my community around me that I depend on.
Yeah.
Like a mechanic or whoever.
Yeah.
Like, I could be, I don't think in reality it would affect me, but it's just a personality thing probably.
Yeah.
There is also that side where like historically definitely religious beliefs have been harmful, and like today there are definitely places where they're harmful, and I see that. But maybe it's more that I don't feel like my behavior in my day-to-day life is the thing that's going to make an impact or is the difference maker in that.
Especially not in that antagonistic and like kind of poking at people constantly way. Yeah. I like that, man. I think that's really powerful. There is a lot to just demonstrating that you are a decent person, in and of itself. And a year later, after somebody knows you, they go, oh my gosh, Ben, you're a atheist? That's crazy. You're so nice, and it's like, well, yeah, atheists can be good people.
Yeah. Sometimes we're nice.
Right,
that happens.
Right.
Well,
That's a fluke.
Well, already that's a good bit for everybody to kind of marinate on. So let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, I want to find out more about the poking and the discussions and your outward voice, that kind of stuff. So We'll be right back. Hey guys, we want to let you know about another opportunity to find your people. July 11th, we're going to be going down to Dayton, Tennessee to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Scopes Monkey Trial. Then also in July, the 25th through the 27th, we're bringing back NanoCon. That's the largest gathering of non-religious people in the state of Tennessee. If you want to find out more, check the description below.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it to your friends or enemies. And if you want to find out more about the organization and how you can get involved, check the description below.
So we're back, and Ben, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the poking and the outward talking to people about your non-belief. The first time that you and I met was on just such an occasion. There was a guy that put something out there on Facebook and said, essentially, I'm a believer. All my friends are believers. I feel like I'm kind of in an echo chamber, and I wouldn't mind being in conversation with guys that were non-believers and had a different worldview. And of course, I jumped right on it and said, I will meet you anywhere. And that's where you and I first met, because you, I guess, felt the same way and came and met that guy. So
yeah, I mean, it sounded like an interesting afternoon. I think I was just like going through Meetup looking for stuff to do on that like lined up with my free time. So yeah, and he was like looking to be challenged, I guess.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I'm up for that. That could be interesting conversation. I don't, it's not stuff that I'm normally talking about in my day to day. So it was like, okay, here's an opportunity to revisit having conversations around this.
Nice.
And yeah, and I met you.
yeah.
How did that experience go in your eyes? I know I've heard Gary talk about that, a bunch, and he ended up, continuing to have those conversations for almost like a year or something, I want to say.
Oh yeah,
It was
me
a
and
good
that
while.
Oh yeah, me and that guy got together
Yeah.
quite regularly.
So how did that conversation go in your eyes? Did you walk away feeling like, yeah, I crushed him, or like, hey, that was really cool, or yeah?
No, yeah. I didn't walk away feeling like, oh, I crushed him. It I think reminded me that that when I am challenging to two people, it is very frustrating to them. Like it was very frustrating to that dude when I was like, yeah, this is how I think about it. Think about this. And so when I was like forthright with that confrontation, it caused friction, because it's supposed to.
Sure.
Like, and that was the point. But then it reminded me, like, oh, I don't really like that. I don't like the feeling of being so frustrating to that guy's beliefs.
Sure.
Even though that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were uncomfortable in that moment, directly challenging someone's.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like an hour after the moment. Like in the moment, I'm sort of like, I'm representing what I actually believe.
Right.
I don't feel uncomfortable in the moment because that was the intent of that. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But I think afterward, like on reflection, I'm like, is that like a consistent role that I want to be in, where I'm making people mad at me because of what I actually believe? And I'm sort of like, no, not really.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's
fascinating.
I think it's consistent in that you read the room well. Like you mentioned a little while ago, how if somebody says God bless you, or you happen to be there when someone prays, that you say, okay, amen. You don't go out of your way to say, hey, let me give you a different way to think about that. You read that room. That's not the appropriate moment. But when the occasion is called upon, like, hey, we're going to get together and intentionally challenge each other's worldviews, then you're okay stepping up at that moment and go, okay, I'll go for that. So I think it is consistent in that you read the room and you're aware of the moment and you do what's appropriate at that moment. So
I try.
Yeah.
I think you do it very, very well. That's one of the things that I like about you, is that you're very good in that way. We could probably use some improvement in that area.
Maybe a little bit, but I'm just going to pretend you didn't say that and move right along. How do you feel about those people that go out there and do like really get, in the trenches and are really, hashing it out and stuff? It sounded like the reason that wasn't something that you were interested in is a good bit of it has to do with kind of a secular humanist mindset, in my opinion. I mean, genuinely trying not to cause discomfort or stress for another human, just trying to meet them where they're at. So with that kind of in mind and kind of your, way to navigate through those spaces, how do you feel about those other people in your camp, the atheists that are out there yelling and picketing and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it differs from person to person.
Sure.
Largely I think like I support it. I support them. I'm like
Right,
behind them,
right.
part of the crowd of like, yeah, go get them.
Right.
And because largely they're, in places, they're in public spaces or places where people are asking to
Right.
have the conversation. Like there are sometimes very aggressive people.
Oh, sure.
Where I feel like, maybe they're not. I don't want to claim them.
Yeah.
Necessarily, but so it differs from person to person. There's definitely like I feel totally comfortable and happy with what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And even people that are more like assertive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a personality thing.
Right.
There's sometimes where it gets to a level where like, I probably don't want to hang out with that guy. And part of that's like that I don't see atheism or non-belief as like necessarily a core part of me or my like who I am.
Yeah,
Sure.
explain that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like it is part of the recipe, I guess. It's in there, but I don't feel like it's something I lead with. It's just like I want to connect on a human level
I love that.
with people. I want to know, ideally who they are, like what's important to them,
Right.
what their day-to-day experience
Yeah.
is. And like I feel more of a need to connect on that level, and I want for that to be more important to other people when they connect with me. Like to me, those things are
Right.
more important as defining me than like I don't believe in God.
Yeah. That's not what the atheism of it isn't really what's navigating you through the world. That's not your guiding principle, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so because there are these other things, again, that secular humanism of it, that compassion for your fellow human type thing, that's really what you lead with in those conversations.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I think that is something that we could all do, a little bit more of. And something I think, is kind of what we're doing in general in a lot of this stuff is we want a more secular world. We want a more humanist world. And you can accomplish that whether you are a hardcore anti-theist, or a Scientologist or a Buddhist, or I mean, literally all of these different camps, we have the ability to find a great deal of stuff that actually connects us and brings us together. I think that's awesome, man.
So Ben, you're never going to be the one to organize the protest, right?
Probably not.
But if it was some good people participating and some reasonable people participating, and it was a cause that you felt good about, you donate to the cause.
Yeah, for sure.
That kind
Donate.
of a thing.
I show up.
Right,
Like,
for the
I'm a good
potlucks.
button a seat for the right
Yeah.
cause. Like you need one more.
Heck yeah.
I'm there.
Well, and you also show up whenever it's not the protest necessarily, but it's when people are connecting. So that's the reason that we see you at a SOAR event, secular occasions for art and reason, or a Sunday assembly or something like that. You show up at those kind of events where people are seeking connection. So yeah, I like that about you.
What do you think we can do in that secular, non-religious-y community as a whole? What can we do to better serve the people in that community? What do you see that's lacking right now in the secular, non-religious spaces?
I don't know that I know.
That's
I don't know
that's
that I
fine
know.
answer.
I think a lot of it is just numbers, and that maybe it's a thing that gets like better with time.
Sure.
I think it like the religious communities like have more, it's easier for them to form like affinity groups around a certain thing,
Yeah.
or to offer more frequent events or events that line up with people's schedules. But a lot of that is just like because there's more people,
Right.
they have the resources to offer that.
Yeah.
And as a community, we don't necessarily yet like have that broader ability to,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Gary and I were talking about this not long ago. The fact that, you know, if you think of the top, let's say top 10 nonprofit organizations in the atheist, non-religious, separation of church and state type of spaces, right? The top 10, you know, have a budget combined that is a fraction of how many different denominations we can think of. You know, we're all gonna pass 14 freaking churches on the way home, and every single one of them has a monthly and yearly budget
Yeah.
that just blows all of the non-religious organizations out of the water.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the like money wise, the numbers are wild. I don't know them like dead on, but just if all the churches had to have open books, like open accounting,
Ooh, buddy.
the numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
So of course, you know, they have more resources to build community.
Yeah. Yeah. That definitely is something we are up against, unfortunately.
Oh, definitely.
But-
Definitely. So you mentioned something earlier about when you were going through your slow deconstruction, right? And I like how you're very analytical and you take in a lot of different information and that kind of thing. But there'll always be somebody who is questioning their faith that is going through the same emotions and same thought processes that all of us have been through. What advice would you give to somebody who was just starting to notice those cracks in their faith and they're starting to question things? What helpful advice would you give to somebody in that?
I think probably give attention to how to build people around you or community around you that are in the same place you are.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, whatever level of like questioning or doubting, or, you know, if you're still like, it's a long process, but wherever you're at, find people nearby. Because if it keeps going down that path and you get into a place where like your grandma doesn't want to talk to you anymore, or
Right.
you have family conflict, or relational conflict because you are having to be honest about what you believe,
Right.
and you don't really have a choice in the matter. Having some support around you just to say like, yeah, me too,
Yeah.
is important, and building it takes time. And so, you know, as you're like listening to debates, or, you know, whatever's causing you to sort of like start deconstructing, taking that time to also build not replacement, but like additional connections and support is important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hugely good advice.
Yeah.
Did you feel like when you were going through that process, did you feel like that was something you were able to successfully accomplish, or is this something that, hey, now that I've, you know, gone through all that and didn't have that support, I realized that is one of the most crucial things?
Yeah, I think a mix. I think it was a lot of like after I'd gone through it and sort of fell off the end of, I think I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you
Then
could,
after that, you went and said, I need to.
I need connections
Right.
or support or community or like people to talk to where
Yeah.
I'm not challenging their fundamental beliefs about who they are
Right.
when I just talk about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I definitely hit that point. But on the other side, like, again, it wasn't as like my experience wasn't as high conflict as other people's.
Right.
So I
Right.
still feel grateful
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But still, I mean, things that you had to, some pitfalls that you had to make sure you were stepping over and making sure that that grounding underneath you is solid. And for me, I'm hearing, a common thread from this and what you had mentioned earlier about when you were thinking, hey, do we need to start stepping back into church for my kids and stuff? How did you end up kind of coming to a decision with that? What was the choice that you made? Did you shop around? Did you guys go to a bunch of different churches? First a Catholic, then we hit a Lutheran, then a Presbyterian, or was it something where you just said, you know what, we're just not going to raise our kids religious at all?
Yeah. I mean, I was married at the time, so my wife at the time and I were both like making the decision together.
Right.
So we were, we visited a few churches.
Mhm.
I don't know that we were doing it a lot,
Yeah.
but probably 3 churches. There was a church that that our daughter went to, like
Mhm.
the daycare and
Sure,
stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we tried to visit that for a month or two. Um, but yeah, and I think eventually we just sort of like um l- let go of the idea of finding that community
Mm.
in a place that was connected to a church.
Mm.
Sort of let go of the church building
Right.
like idea and the service
Mhm.
idea, and it was more about like how do we find a community of people that
Yeah.
we are a part of.
Yeah.
And that eventually led us to Sunday Assembly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what was the result of that? Did you find it? And yeah, it sounds like, yeah, you did. And Sunday Assembly is this group that meets, regularly once a month, and a bunch of people all hanging out, singing some songs, learning a little and stuff.
Mhm.
Did you find that was a good space for your children? Were they also involved in that, and did they enjoy it? All that good stuff.
Yeah, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it was a pretty good space for the children. There was like a kind of separate, I want to say daycare kind of thing for the children.
Yeah.
But it comes back to like what resources are available,
Sure.
and that's a thing where when it was like active and growing, that
Mm.
was like there were volunteers for that and
Right.
resources for that.
Right.
Um, but you know, it that type of thing I think couldn't be sustained.
Yeah.
So that that doesn't exist. I mean, Sunday Assembly exists, but like the idea of it having a child care program or a
Sure.
singles group or like these extra kind of things,
Right.
it's a resources problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think those other offerings are important? Like, do you think it is valuable for the secular community, writ large, for us to be able to have, say, an option for secular daycare or an option for a secular singles night or whatever? Or is that just kind of like, it'd be great if we had it, but
Uh, I mean, I don't like. I don't think I don't think those two things are super important.
sure,
I'm not like, if we had a daycare and a singles group,
we'd fix
we'd be
everything.
killing it.
Right, right.
Um, I think if we had the ability to have more events that brought the same people together so that they're building consistent connections that are
Sure.
happening on a more frequent basis,
Right.
like if it was a weekly thing or every few days, or if it was like there was one in this suburb and a different one in that suburb,
Yeah.
and it's easier to just get to on a Wednesday.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's those kinds of things, like proximity is and consistency,
Yeah.
frequency of connection, and we're lacking that. I don't know what the fix is.
Sure.
Part of that resource thing is like affinity groups or support programs. And so that's in a category of like it represents something that would be important to building a community, but we don't have the ability to do.
Sure. So it's not really so much we need specifically the Atheist Bowling League. We just need more opportunities for our people in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, man.
I mean, and we need to. It wouldn't hurt if we had the threat of eternal damnation, just to keep people motivated.
You know, that is true. That is one of the things. It's like it's so frustrating because with the religious people, they get to get up there and they say things like, "Hey, you got to donate," or "Hey, we gotta support this mission trip," or let's go over to Carol's house next weekend and cut her grass or whatever. Because if you don't, whereas with us, it's like, I mean, nothing's really going to happen,
Right.
Everything's going to be about the same. Maybe you feel a little bad one morning when you wake up.
You'll just miss an afternoon.
That's
Fine.
right. That's right. If you don't give your $10, I mean, sure, technically we won't be able to pay the lights this month. But I guess that's about where it ends, you guys,
Yeah.
So at our next gathering, you're not going to tell people that if they don't give like 10% of their income, that
Right.
they're a terrible person and they're not valuing the.
Look, here's the thing. Okay, I'm all about the evidence, right? I'm all about the skepticism. We don't know for sure that they won't be punished for not giving $10. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like we're not 100% that they won't have eternal conscious torment, right?
You're not saying they will. You're just raising the possibility.
I'm just saying you should be prepared, And if we're gonna place our bets on either side, I'm just saying maybe throw that $10 in our coffers.
So the solve is we need to come up with a way to passively threaten punishment. This is an important part. If we could just have a single-handed authority over morality,
right?
And
that
whether
would do it.
and everybody who's not whatever we say is like evil.
That would
That's
also,
important.
if we could do that better, and really, really other, certain groups like that would.
And we need
coalesce.
to promise that people can't die.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
So if we had those three things,
Wow, man.
Damn it, we're doing this. We're doing this whole community
Doing it all
thing
wrong.
bad.
I'm
yeah.
starting over.
Well, I do. I think you touched on a couple of good things there, and we've already talked about it a little bit, but I would love just a direct focus on this for a second, which is that secular parenting stuff, because that was a big part of it for you. That was something that you both wrestled with your kids, and again, what advice would you give to somebody right now who is in that same kind of headspace you were in? Would you say to them, "Hey, yeah, go shop around churches"? Would you say to them like, "Oh no, actually, man, there's all this other really cool stuff out there that's secular humanist. Just download the PDF." Like what would you offer them to kind of help make that period easier?
In terms of raising their kids?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of raising their kids.
Okay.
I mean, I shy away from really giving advice to other people, but I think a thing for me is your kids are going to be good people if you raise them right, whether or not they go to church.
Yeah.
Like churches and community around churches aren't the cornerstone of morality.
Right.
in the way that we're sort of raised in the South to believe that they are. And so naturally, with good people around them, like kids grow up fine and learn to be good people.
Yeah. You don't need to threaten them with punishment for them to recognize.
It is counterproductive, actually, to say they should be good because, or else they'll like burn in flames.
Right.
That's really not a good. That's not so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It teaches people the reason that you should do good things is just so that you don't get punishment, as opposed to, hey, the reason that we help, little Timmy when he falls, or, we show up for Sally's party is because we care, because we're doing the right thing just simply because it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I think that there are a lot of people navigating that space that could use that.
Hey there, if you're liking the video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. And if you want to find out more about the organization, check out the description below.
We want to let you know about a great opportunity to find your people this summer. This July 11th, we'll be heading out to Dayton, Tennessee to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Scopes Monkey Trial. And July 25th through 27th, we are bringing back NanoCon, the largest gathering of non-religious people in the entire state of Tennessee. Find out more in the description below.
All right, so before we get out of here, Elliot and I have spent way too much time in conversation about this, but I know that you've got some views on this also. And so I'm glad to have you in here today, because now I get to get your take on it. But determinism versus free will. I know this is something that you've contemplated and analyzed some information. What is your view?
I mean, I'm a determinist, basically. I'm a little worried you're like, I feel like you two have talked about it enough where you're like, oh, I don't need another person on this.
Gary's got no choice. He just doesn't realize it yet. Don't worry, we'll get there.
But at the same time, Elliot's like, I need somebody who's ready to talk about determinism. I'm like, I'm on board.
Yeah.
Determinist. Yeah. We don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that, okay, first off, how did you get to that space where you say, hey, look, I really just don't think free will is a thing. I really don't think the idea of us actually making the choices in the way that people talk about it is true. What led you to that path in general?
I think for me it was kind of philosophical thought around the soul and the brain.
Oh.
And like who and what and my choices, like what's driving my choices.
Yeah.
Certainly my brain is involved, but my physical brain.
Right.
And when you get to a certain point of not really believing in ghosts and magic, and then you're like, well, I still think there's something unphysical, I guess, in my brain letting me make free will choices.
Yeah.
And there was a point past, I guess, just atheism where I'm like, I don't think there's magic in my brain giving me free will.
Right.
I think it's just my mushy brain,
right,
which is physical, going through chemical and electrical processes.
Sure.
Now, this is a deep topic. This is a dense topic for a lot of people. And it takes a while to get your head around. I'm probably not all the way there. I'm still figuring these things out. So my two determinist friends here will have to help me get there. I don't know that you'll be successful or not. But so when we go home this evening and I say, do I want pizza or a hamburger, or am I not making a choice? Do I not have free will to make that choice? Or am I thinking about it on too small of a scale?
No, that's perfectly fine. I mean, no, not really. I feel like you have to split it into a camp of like, not technically. I don't think technically, no, that you are that you have a free will choice.
Right.
But you and I and everybody that are humans are experiencing. We have an experience of making free will choices.
Yeah.
So experientially, we're making a choice.
So break that down for us. What is the difference between an actual choice and just that experience of a choice?
So there's a part of it to me, and this more leans on like philosophy, or there's some of it that's like philosophy overlapping with physics, something. But we have limited intelligence, like as humans. Sure. Not just everybody broadly. Like we aren't perfectly knowing.
Yeah.
And especially about the future, we don't have perfect knowledge of the future. And that ignorance of the future, or our ability to predict the future, we experience as free will.
So it's that lack of the complete picture, you're saying, as to how the dominoes have all fallen to get us to this point. Because we don't see all of those connections in perfect detail, it gives us this feeling as if, oh yeah, I did just wake up and decide I want to watch this movie as opposed to that movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also like fuzzy language we use, or the only language we can use because we aren't perfectly knowing beings. But it's fuzzy language around the unknown mechanics of how we got to that choice. Like I don't know which parts of my brain connected together to get me to that decision. And what we attribute to free will, or we use the language of free will, is more or less like hand wavy language around some set of things that I don't understand happened in my brain that brought me to this choice.
Yeah.
Look, and I don't want you guys to think that I just either discount. I actively ponder these things. For instance, Elliot told me one time, he said, okay, Gary, you think you've got free will? Yes. Okay. Choose to believe right now that this is a soccer ball. And I said, okay, I see that. I get that. And it was a beautiful day outside. It was a gorgeous sunshining day. And he said, choose to believe that it's thunderstorming right now. I said, okay, I get that. Earlier in the example I gave about dinner tonight, right? I could even push myself a little bit and go, okay, Gary, I know it feels like you made a choice right there. You know, did you want a hamburger or pizza, or what did you want for dinner? And I know it feels like you made a choice, but I noticed that you didn't choose goat brain, or I noticed also that you didn't choose to get your nourishment this evening from sand. Don't you think that if you had free will, that you could have said, you know what, tonight I'm going to get all the energy I need from sand, or from, And so my choice was still limited to these things that fit into this one box. Right. And even though in that box there are things, still, Gary, you stayed in that box. You didn't say, no, I don't have to stay in that box. I can just eat a piece of wood and I can get everything. You couldn't do that. You were still confined to that box. Am I starting to get there?
I think a good bit of what you just said there has some legs to it, because, for instance, right, that idea that, total libertarian free will, like, yeah, man, go start gnawing on some tree bark, grab some gravel and shove it in your face. The reason that you don't do that is because you are influenced by things that are already outside of your control, radically outside of your control.
Yeah, like what my body depends on for nourishment.
Exactly. As a human being, as an evolved, primate that we are, right? We are incapable of eating certain things. There are just certain biological things on this earth we absolutely cannot eat. And more so, there's all this stuff out there that is abiotic, that is absolutely not alive, that, again, we can't eat. Like, if we just sat down and started just chewing on grass, like a cow, it would not work out well for us, right? And so because of that, you're already kind of shoehorned into this space against your will. You have no ability to choose otherwise there.
I think we have different flavors.
Yeah,
of,
good.
Of,
Let's
of
do it. Yeah,
communicating.
give it.
Yeah, like it. I don't know that I disagree, but it's the idea of like pretend this bottle is a soccer ball or something, or choose that you perceive this bottle as a soccer ball. I don't know if that is what that type of perception is what I'm thinking about when I'm having conversations about free will.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us your side.
Yeah, give me something here. God, this guy's insufferable.
I mean, I don't have a choice in the matter.
I think like the experience of free, we all go around experiencing that we have free choice and having to make choices in an unknown, like, world with people that we can't predict and a future that we don't know about. And like the experience of that seems like free will.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, I don't think technically it is. I like philosophically. Sometimes the language I use is trying to picture what other animals think of their free will.
Sure.
And part of the problem is the limitation of our intelligence and ability to predict things is related to our concept of free will in my mind. And so, and part of that problem is like, we're the most intelligent thing we know about.
Sure.
So we're like at the top.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to think of something, give me a mammal, some kind.
I was gonna. You know what? It's so stupid, but platypus was the first thing.
Yeah.
Let's. No, we can do a better one.
It's out now. It's out now. Platypus.
I feel like such an idiot that was the first one. But yeah.
I mean, so part of it too is like we're hopefully not too controversial. We're like in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
So part of the experience of being a human is also experiencing like human behaviors and human culture, whatever, human stuff.
Right.
So like a platypus, I would like to believe experiences something akin to what they would think of as free will, which is that to them, they have limited ability to really predict what other platypi are doing.
I don't know.
They have the ability to affect the future, but they can't really predict the future.
Right.
And they're of roughly equal intelligence to other competing platypi.
Yeah. That's what we're going with now. Yeah.
Feels a little dirty to put the double S on.
I know. That's what I was. I know. I was about to like sound it out, and then I just went. You know what? Let's not do that. We don't need any more editing work. But yeah,
I feel I could be wrong, but I feel like both are acceptable.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
But yeah, so there could be. I don't know that much about that animal, but there could be competing platypi.
Right.
They can't. They grant themselves in the feeling, they have some feeling akin to free will.
Sure.
Because they can't know their own decisions about things in the future.
Right.
And they can't know for sure other platypi choices.
Right.
Because they're at the same level of intelligence. But they're prey. I assume they catch fish and
I think they eat fish. I'm not sure.
Like
that's a really good interest.
So much we don't know about these
animals. I know. We really should have picked it. I really should have picked a better animal. God.
They hunt.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah. But they would, I think, attribute less of that sense of free will to the thing that they hunt because they are very good at predicting its behavior. They give it less free will because it's their behavior and their job to know what that thing's doing. And if it's predictable, if it's very closely, perfectly predictable.
Right.
If I do this, it's going to run that way.
Right.
They're always over here. They're always doing that. In this weather, that because they're predictable, that's
Right.
not really free will. I know what they're going to do.
I think that is a phenomenally good point. I think that is a really, really good point, because so many people will hear this and just intuitively catch what you're saying there. Of, if you spend 20, 30 minutes watching a fish, there's this overwhelming sense that comes over you where you're like, well, that fish is just kind of being driven more than it is actively driving the car itself, But I mean, we don't really know that one way or the other. But I think a large part of that feeling comes from the ability to have enough knowledge to, like you said, make those pretty confident predictions, right?
Mhm.
Now, so then here's what's weird with that. Can we ever get there with people? Could we ever get to the point of studying psychology, sociology, physics, biology? Could we get to that point where we currently are at when we look at a brown squirrel or something? We go, yes, the squirrel is going to do this with the nuts and he's going to do that with the nest and blah, blah. Is that possible?
Probably. I don't, like, as people, I don't think the problem to me, and like the big, threat, existential threat in my mind is AI and super
Sure.
intelligence.
Sure.
So I think if we as a species succeed in making something super intelligent of a higher order of intelligence, then we can grasp, even as a collective human group.
Right.
The problem with that, multiple problems. One is, if it can predict us to such a high extent in the way that we can predict fish, then it doesn't really treat us like we have free will, because it has a model of predicting us incredibly well.
Interesting. Yeah.
But as humans, I don't think we can get to that point as people,
Right.
even as groups of people, like individually. But I feel like it's possible we can create something that is more intelligent than us, and that has outcomes we didn't want it to have.
But that's a whole nother level. I mean, I'm still wrestling with the whole just basic, do we have free will, or are we determined?
Yeah.
If you guys are determinists, then why do we wrestle with things? Should I go to college? Should I fire this employee? I want to propose to my girlfriend. Do I do it this week, or should I wait some time?
That's a good.
We wrestle with decisions. Just in daily life, aside from what we're going to have for dinner, more in terms of what direction am I going to take my life? And
those big questions.
Yeah, we wrestle with decisions.
Absolutely.
If we're determined, then what's with all the wrestling with decisions? Are we just putting ourselves through
good question.
Needless?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a really common human experience. How does that fit into a no free will view?
Yeah, I would see it like this. I wrestle with homework. Like, if I'm in school, I'm in a advanced math class or something, like I have to wrestle with the homework, and it is a struggle. And I'm like, I'm smart. Why isn't it? It should just be. It could just. If I'm going to know the answer, then to me, it's like that's the same struggle. You are struggling with an intellectual problem, which you don't know for sure the solution to.
It's a lack of knowledge.
Your future, these things, like, it's a lack of knowledge. You're struggling with a lack of knowledge and an intellectual problem, and all of those. Really, in every choice, but even those big choices, you struggle with them more because they're big. Like, is the right choice to go to college or to do this trade?
Yeah,
that is, you don't have perfect knowledge about what those outcomes are going to be. You might get into a lot of debt going to college, and it doesn't have the benefit to your career that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might feel like you're stuck in a trade and you could have done more with your life.
Yeah.
And it's worthwhile to struggle over those. But the language we use around that is around free will and the choices we have. But the struggle going on in your mind is like, what's the right answer to this problem with like.
What do you think of that? I think I mean, again, I think that experience you described is incredibly universal. I think every single person has had that. But Ben says, yeah, man, but in all honesty, like, you wouldn't have that problem if you actually knew this math equation better, you know? And same thing here. Like, it's just a math equation, and there's too many variables in this one.
I get that I wouldn't have questions if I knew the future, but my father used to say, if a bullfrog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass. You know, we can always just throw an if in there. And yeah, that would clear up a lot of if we knew the future. We can't know the future. So we make decisions, you know, and we say, you know, I started to say I've got A or B. I've actually got many paths I could go down, and I'm going to choose H, you know, that path. So we have a lot of variables. We don't know the future. And so we choose the various paths that we're going to take. I was really hoping that with you two powerhouses in here that I would, you know, okay, now I've got it. Now I understand it. Now I'm determined. And you have left me wanting more. I'll just tell you. So, Elliot informed me that, because I do see that I can't believe that that's a soccer ball or believe that it's storming right now. But I also say I do get to choose what I want for dinner. I almost felt like I was making some ground right there with the, hey, you still chose food instead of sand. I almost felt like I was doing that. Elliot informed me that there's some sort of a middle ground called a compatibilist. And he says, you may be a compatibilist. And so I try, okay, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm a compatibilist. But oftentimes I feel more inclined to side with Hitchens on it and just appreciate irony and just say, look, of course we have free will because we've got no choice. You know,
I do love that line. I will say it's a great line.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I think for me, one of the things that was really important in terms of kind of getting to this space of, you know, determinism and a total lack of free will, was the recognition that currently, as somebody that believed in free will, as somebody that actively said, yes, I can choose otherwise, I recognize that there were choices that I absolutely was fundamentally barred from making. I have no choice in a myriad of things. Like, it is not up for contention. Nobody disagrees. Maybe somebody disagrees about like past life regression or whatever, but I definitely had no say in the matter for what hospital my mother gave birth to me at. I had no say in that matter, right? Well, so the reason I think that was so interesting to me is because what I recognized was two distinct categories. At that time, believing in free will and believing that there was an ability to make choices, I then had to accept that there are choices that I am fundamentally forever barred from making. And then the question was, what's the differentiating criteria between the two categories? And I couldn't ever find one. And because I couldn't determine what was that thing that made choice possible, it led me to this space of, well, shoot, maybe all of these.
Well, let me offer one.
Yeah, please.
Things that are within your control. So it's not within my control to choose where I was born, when I was born, my eye color, or any of those things.
What do you mean by within your control, though?
Because I do feel like it's within my control what I have for dinner tonight.
But
or if I work on my marriage or end it or propose to my girlfriend or which college I want to go to, or those things I do feel like are within my control.
So in that case, it sounds to me like there's still those two categories. You recognize that there are things completely outside of your control, and you recognize that there are things in your control. What is the differentiating criteria? How do you determine what is in your control and what isn't?
Yeah,
I don't know, really.
Well, I'm just saying. So there are several things. For instance, I can't go back in time, so
Sure.
we're limited by time.
Sure.
So it has to be in the now,
Sure.
right? So and I can't choose. I can't go back in time and make a choice about when I was born. I can't do that. But if it's in this time, then I can say I will have these things for dinner. I can make choices now. So some of those determining factors are what time are we talking about?
Yeah.
You know, some of those could, aside from time, some of those could be physical. In other words, I don't have the ability to choose to be taller or of a different ethnicity or any of those kind of things. And so time could be a constraint, or the thing that because it's in this segment of time, it does allow me to choose. I can't choose things 100 years from now.
Sure.
And I can't choose things 100 years ago. But in the now, I do have, and I can't choose things that are outside of my physical capabilities, such as my height or my ethnicity, things like that. But if it's within my physical capabilities and it's within this time and it's within, and I'm sure upon further reflection, we could come up with a dozen of these.
Sure.
But in these, in this section, I have the ability to make decisions, so.
It feels to me, and we'll bounce off of this for a second here, because I know this conversation will just never end, honestly.
Sure.
But it feels to me like what you just said, honestly, is all of my choices are determined, because for some reason, time behind us and time in front of us is out of our control. So we only have this very narrow window where we actually have anything within our control, which is completely out of our control. It is 100% out of our control what is actually in our frame of reference, where we are now, right? And it seems to me that, again, ultimately you're left with this space of saying, man, there is this obvious category that I have no ability to engage in whatsoever. But then for some reason, we still mark off this other section and go, yeah, but I can engage there. But
but you're taking the fact that you can't make decisions there and you're applying that across the board and saying, so we have no choice at all.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we agree that, so just the same in the like materialist camp, if we agree that matter is real, then we're both on the same footing. And if you then want to posit something extra, that's fine. That just has to be presented. We all agree that there are things completely outside of our control.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, what is the actual distinguishing criteria? I
gave you several.
But it still falls foul of the same problem, because time still is time is still split into that same category. We haven't actually made any.
It feels like you're saying, because I don't have total control, I have no control.
What I'm saying is, because we don't have total control, it's clear that there is a space where free will doesn't exist. And so then when somebody wants to say later, yes, but it comes back into play, all I have to say is, sure, just present how that would work, right? Back to what you were talking about with like consciousness a little bit in the soul. That was something for me that helped me step away from the belief in a soul, because it was like, wait, this neuron fires this way and it connects to this and that. Where is the room for a soul in that? What I want to do to wrap up this thought about free will, and I have no choice in the matter, by the way, is, as somebody that does not believe that we have those ability to make choices, do you feel like you've lost anything about the world? Do you feel like you've lost the ability to correct people or say things are good or bad? Do you feel like hope, meaning, and purpose goes out the window? I mean, or is it all the same?
It's largely the same. I mean, there's some of those experiences. Man, there was a lot. there was a lot there.
Yeah, we've got. Yeah, we'll definitely have to come back and talk about it.
Yeah, I think part of it, part of it is maybe personality wise. To me, there's like a humility in
Mm.
In like the future exists, and even though no one knows what it is, it is there in very much the same way that the past exists.
Sure.
And something happened in the past, and we get to know about that, and something happens in the future, and it is there waiting.
Right.
And we don't know what it is, but it is very much real in the same way that the past is real.
Yeah.
To me, there's a humility in that, in recognizing that I don't know it, or that we can't know it.
Right.
And it's it's like I want to find out what it is. Like, it's mostly curiosity driven, I think. Like, man, what crazy stuff is going to happen?
Yeah.
What movies do they come out with?
Right.
Like, I'm just along for the ride, largely.
Well, let me ask you this. Ben, will you choose to come back in here and spend some more and spend some more time with us and help us figure out things like this?
I don't think I have a choice.
Yes,
nice.
That's my man right there. That's it. I love it. Yeah. Thank you, man.
Well,
thank you. This was fun.
We look forward to seeing you again, man.
Sounds good.